Right, good morning everybody. Morning. I hope everybody's had a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and a pastry or what have you. At least we're in the warm in any case, and in the dry. Good to see so many people. Few faces I recognise, that table there, and there's a few new faces as well. Well, first of all, welcome to Oakfields Farm. This is certainly my first one, which is it's an open day, but it's also a farmers panel and a discussion, Q&A, and it is about Vector, which Vector is the automated feeding system by Lely, and it supports the whole of the Lely portfolio, whether it's robotic milking, what have you. Very fortunate to be on this farm today, and it is with the kind permission of Peter Richard Burbage here, because they've very kindly let us come to this quite amazing farm, and when you walk around it, you'll see what I mean. It is quite an incredible place. So really, Lely Vector, automated feeding. My name is Derrick Davies. I work as a customer sales support for Lely Atlantic, based in Birmingham, and I support centres, mainly specialising in Vector automated feeding across the UK and also Ireland, all across Ireland as well. And obviously there are local centres, but we support them. But here we are today at Oakfields Farm. That's a little bit of an aerial picture of what an incredible place it is here in Northamptonshire. It's a great place. The agenda for today, obviously I'll do the welcome. I want to introduce you to our panel. We've been very fortunate. We've managed to drag some people from all over the country today to come here, and they've very kindly given us their time to do this today. So I'm going to introduce you to the panel, and then we'll obviously go through our agenda through the day. And then Peter and Richard are going to give us a bit of an update about the farm, where they are, and you're more than welcome to ask them some questions about the farm this morning. Then we'll go for a quick wander around the farm. We'll have a bit of a walk. There's a bit of lunch. And then we'll progress with this afternoon. I'll introduce Vector in a little bit more detail to you. And then there'll be a discussion panel. And please ask these people a lot of questions. I don't like them sat here quiet. They've travelled all over the country. So let's get the most out of them. So to start off, I'm going to introduce the panel to you. So we have Peter and Richard Burbage here. And they are the owners of Oakfield Farm, and it's by their kind permission that we're here today. And hopefully they will give you a bit of an insight to the farm and what they've achieved. We have Mark Davies next. He's travelled with his wife Caroline all the way from southwest Wales. Mark is a dairy farmer, milking on 4 robotic astronauts. And also Mark and Caroline have bought the Vector system, and it's been installed next year. So again, a good opportunity to ask somebody about the Vector systems and what they want to achieve. Finally, but not least, we have Simon Smith. Simon Smith is a nutritionist and farm consultant as well. And but you do beef and dairy. Simon is also the nutritionist for this farm. So it just fits in quite well, and hopefully you'll see with the new exciting things that are going to be happening here, you'll see how it all works. Mike Steele might join us. Again, Mike is farm management support lead for Lely. He is a veterinary, but he's been called out this morning, and he might be here this afternoon. It just depends how he progresses. And farm management support is a management system that supports Lely farmers, whether it's robotic milking, whether it's automated feeding. But I'll explain that a little bit in more detail this afternoon for you. In any case, I've done enough. So I'm going to hand you over to Peter and Richard Burbage. They're going to give us a little bit of an insight to the farm. And obviously they can tell us, hopefully, a lot about it. If you do have any questions for the brothers this morning as we're progressing, if you put your hand up, Stuart there, that's it, he'll have a roaming mic. What we want to do, we are going to record it a little bit because we want to get the questions, and that's how we learn as well, to give you good tangible answers going forward, because we want to progress with Vector. So if there are any questions for the brothers this morning, please just put your hand up and Stuart will run across to you as quick as he can and put a mic in front of you. Right, Peter and Richard Burbage, I'm going to hand over to you. And yeah, I'm going to take it easy now. Enjoy.
Yeah, I guess so.
Morning, everyone. Welcome. And I'm Pete.
I'm Rich.
And welcome to Oakfields Farm. Yeah, just a brief insight, really. We were fortunate enough to buy Oakfields as a Bearfield site in 2005. And along with our other business interests, we've sort of progressed and sort of built it to what it is today. And today we are a 300 cow suckler herd with 250 winter calving cows, 50 spring calving cows. So sort of about, I suppose, 3 parts of the way through calving at the moment. We calve this from middle of October through to Christmas, down to workload really. We're obviously contractors as well as farmers, and we try and fit everything along so it sort of fits together nicely. We have a small scale AD plant, 125 kilowatt. This time of year, probably 25 to 30% of our gas is produced from cattle muck, and the rest is from forage. And yeah, we sort of house, our cattle have just come into house with just about up to full winter ration. Only the last week, really, we've been holding off really because we're desperately short of forage. So we've been trying to eke it out. So that's where we're at the moment with on the farm. We've grown about 200 acres of maize with 800 acres of grass and about 200 acres of cereals. We use the cereals as a rotation for grass. Our passion would be grass growth. That would what me and Richard really sort of want to do more than anything else. We would be focused more on grass and forage than we would anything else, grazed grass and preserved forage. We would try and aim to do sort of a kilo to 1.1 kilos of daily weight gain on our heifers and our growing stock just from grass. We finish all the bulls, all the males, we leave entire for the first 6 weeks, and after 6 weeks we castrate them. And then they would go into an intensive finishing system on a 50% forage and a blend to finish them, aiming around about 14 and a half months old. I'll probably let Rich sort of have a bit of a...
I think you've covered everything. Aside from that, on the farming side of things, we're obviously contractors as well. So everything we do has to kind of fit in around that too. Specialising in forage production, straw, muck and slurry. We're just about to build a dairy as well, where the Vector system probably came into in the fore. We maybe wouldn't have looked at it just on the beef system initially, but now it definitely does fit in with that. We would justify it on its own. But the dairy is an added bonus. That will be 120 cows milked through 2 robots, which if you see the site at the moment, you probably won't believe it, but we should be milking in the beginning of March. There's 60 heifers up in the shed that you'll see. We'll have a walk around, and they do start calving at the beginning of March, so we've got a bit of a pressure from that one. Aside from that, I think that pretty much covers everything that we do.
I'll probably disagree with the
here we go.
Statement.
Debating already.
The Vector, for me, initially, the reason we even talked about the Vector, we invited Andy Wilson to initially look at just the projects of the feasibility of starting milking, and at the time we were looking to replace our feeder wagon, and to spec it up to make it longevity, as our feeder wagon was 11 years old with a stainless steel lining and steering axle and everything. So we got to sort of 75, 80,000 pounds for a feeder wagon, and all of a sudden Andy said, had we thought about the Vector, and we had been fortunate enough to see it on one of our customers' farms, and we did like what we saw. But yeah, just you didn't even enter your head really about the Vector. Now, having it on the farm, truthfully, yeah, I don't know, I can't, I wouldn't want to manage without it, but I can see the justifications for it, and it brings so many other things to the party that you didn't even think at the time about when you were trying to justify it in your own mind. But I think a lot of it is getting over that perception of having a robot feeding your cows. Once you've got over that and you see it, and I'm not here to sell Vector, but yeah, it's I really do think it's a real added bonus. And on the beef side of things, I think you can make it fit. But
I thought that's what I said.
What? I thought you said initially we didn't think we could.
Yeah. So.
But anyway.
Does anybody have any questions for the brothers?
Yeah, sorry, and look, we carry a lot of figures around in our head, and we're more than happy to share them to you. There's not really an awkward question to talk about, whether it's finances or anything. We will answer it as honestly and as frankly as we possibly can. So please do not feel you can't talk about anything. There's not really a taboo subject here that we are uncomfortable talking about. So whether it be money, or how we justify it, what we do. Even when you're walking around, please feel free to ask a question, because, like I say, we carry most of the information around in our head, and what we don't know, we'll try and find out for you. So.
Are you feeding with one tub then?
Two.
Two tubs?
Yeah.
So when you got your dairy unit, will that be enough?
Yeah, I think so. We looked at the capacity of it, and yeah, I'm pretty confident that we're not at full capacity yet. You know, sort of, don't get me wrong. We had a human problem this morning that made the robot sort of slow down, and they're playing catch up now. But yeah, they spend a fair lot of time dormant at the moment.
We're quite lucky with the setup, with the system. The robots come straight out of the shed, straight down our feed passageway, so we're as efficient as we can be. But even going forward, we're mixing at the perfect capacity at the moment, around about 600 kilos. So we're getting a really good mix. We can creep that up a little bit depending on what your ration is. Ours will allow us to, and we've actually put another shed up across the yard, which we're pretty confident feeding what we are at the moment, and the dairy, it will also feed that one as well. Anything else? I'll ask you a question.
No.
No more questions? You've done a good job, guys.
It's Pete.
With obviously there's an exciting project coming ahead of you in the dairy and stuff like that. What made you go for dairying? Because, no disrespect, you have a contracting business, you have a beef enterprise, and now we're going dairying. It's just...
Look, you know, I think we have got enough on our plate, and to be fair, you do ask yourself that question two or three times. But for us, it creates this circular business, and that we enjoy growing grass, we enjoy making forage, and I just kind of feel that by doing what we're doing with the dairy, having the AD plant, we are creating this complete circle of what we're doing, and we feed the forage to the cows, the muck will go into the AD, we use the electricity on the farm, we use the digestate to grow grass, and we have the machinery out there to grow good forage, to spread the muck in a timely fashion, to make it all fit really. It just seems to fit.
But also the labour. Labour is obviously a massive issue. I think everyone would probably would find the same thing. It doesn't matter how many people you employ, even if you're just relying on one person, that can soon change. So with the robotics, it's just, for us, we're always going to be here to a degree, and it's just an extension to us. Having a robot scraping with the dairy, scraping, milking, feeding, it's reliable stuff to a degree. There's a question, I think.
You're talking about getting the live weight gains from the beef from grass, though, as it grazed grass. Will you be looking to get a certain amount of milk from grazed grass as well?
100%, yeah. We will.
How much?
Well, look, as much as we can. I mean, 4,000 litres realistically, and we'll build accordingly. It's really difficult to tell you exactly what we're going to do on the dairy until we get going, but the intention is we'll have a grazeway system. Theoretically, again, whether it starts straight away, we'll have an ABC system. We rotationally graze our beef cattle, so that's not new to us. We know we're pretty confident on the way we grow grass, maximising our production. We want to mimic that with the dairy cattle. But on the same token, the difference with the dairy to the beef, we've got an asset that we can squeeze a little bit more. Our beef we can only do so much with, whereas the dairy, litres in the tank, we can play with that. And if the economics mean that we can put a bit more feed into them with the vectors and get a bit more milk, then that's what we'll do. But we do want to focus on grazing.
So yeah, I mean, the system will be a split block, so there'll be a spring block and an autumn block to basically make use of that grazing with obviously each of those periods. So obviously we can feed and manage those cows individually as individual blocks, that is, obviously with the grazeway and obviously the vector, so we can feed either the tail end of the lactation on those autumn calvers or push for milk on the spring calvers to maximise the quality of the forage. But with the flexibility of topping them up, we can serve forage and concentrate as and where necessary. And yeah, as Rich said, I mean, we're trying to, we set ourselves some targets, and well, in fact, I think you set me some targets and what we need to be, putting it right, of what we need to achieve from grazing, and it's not all about buying it in a lorry, so,
Yeah,
which is fair enough.
I would probably more of a purist grazer with a focus of doing as much as we could from grazed grass and Simon did say that, you know, you've got to remember milk in the tank pays the bills, and you know, you can't just be focused on one thing. And to be fair, I actually thought that was wrong, because the focus for me is grass. But I think having the Vector will allow us the flexible system to allow that to be fed, and you know, with a buffer feeding alongside the grass to make it work. And I think our business, to be fair, to sum it up, we would be pretty good in the middle of what we're doing from now until February, and I don't mean that conceited in any way, but we would have quite a lot of attention to detail in this period, but we would be pretty poor on the shoulders of our business. And when I say the shoulders, when we wean the calves in September, we the first week of September we'd wean the bulls, and the last week of September we'd wean the heifers, and they would come in, and we would be busy doing other things, and they would probably, I'm not going to say suffer, because I think that would be the wrong word, but I think that we could have been a lot better at allowing them to perform. And the same in the spring. We have other business interests and other demands on our times, and we wouldn't be very good at, you know, with dropping tractors off to use them for other things on feeder wagons, and in the spring when we get busy with workload. And the automated feeding system has changed that dramatically, in that now we feel that the animals are fed to a standard all year round, not just when it suits us. And although I'm not naive enough to think that we can't, you know, the milking robot's going to be the saviour of everything, I kind of think we wouldn't even be entertaining this if it wasn't for the automation, because we've got too much to do with our time as it is. But I feel that we can manage more, we just can't physically do a lot more. You know, I feel we've got plenty of capacity to manage our business, but I don't think we've got any more ability to physically do any more than we're actually doing. And I think the automated systems on every count is going to help us do that. Because
Will you be flying there then?
no, it won't be. The first lot of calves will probably go because we've got too much on our plate. But there will probably, because we've got more time in the autumn. So the autumn calvers will be focused where the replacements come from. And the spring calvers will be our sort of put to a terminal sire to introduce them into the beef system and make that work.
You know, like with the sucklers, like obviously making forage for the sucklers, is straw quite a high basement diet and stuff?
Good question.
It's a really good question. Simon, do you
So
want to?
the reason I laugh is when Simon first came here, I said, I don't like straw because I don't like putting it in a diet to take it out again. And I saw this nonsense about water. And all of a sudden, we seem to be putting more bloody straw in it and more bloody water into our ration. So
But it's actually working really well.
So I'm going to eat my words and go back on that. So yeah, I'll let Smithy answer that for you.
Yeah, no, but Joanne, you're exactly right. I mean, the beauty, the cornerstone of being able to do the things that we do here and the performance they do is by making fantastic forage. And, you know, and I guess, as I say, Peter Richard said, look, we're not spending all our time and all this investment making top quality silage and then some idiot coming in telling us to water it down with straw. Well, it was interesting. Again, the Vector does this. It wouldn't be about January time, end of January last year. Obviously, had a good 2 or 3 months on the Vector, and the growing animals, so the growing heifers that we're just literally storing with a bit of growth to turn out to finish this summer. You know, we knew what they were eating. They were absolutely eating them out of house and home, far more than we rationed, and weren't really growing. You know, weren't delivering the growth rates, because you'll see the facilities to weigh regularly are just fantastic. And, you know, they were on top quality silage, everything added up. And I said, well, you know what we're going to have to do here, don't we? It's just the diet's just firing through them. You know, they're just it's passing through the room far too quick. We need to steady things up. Are you going to say we put straw in this diet? Well, yes, we are. And it was literally like a eureka moment, wasn't it? The intake settled down and the growth rates then just came back to what... And we weren't looking for just that kilo a day. And it just, they lay drier. They obviously utilise everything so much better.
It's probably a little bit of mismanagement on my part, because I knew they were loose, but I didn't think they were that loose. Because we got the heifers virtually up to bulling weight, we aim to bull at sort of 306. We aim for a 640 kilo cow. That's our average cow weight. We aim to bull at about 365 kilos, and we were close to that in December. November rather.
Yeah, early on.
And we didn't really probably weigh them as regular as we would have done, but we just ran them through the crush and thought these animals weren't performing at the level that we were used to. And and then the sort of panic phone call to Simon to say why. But yeah, I knew they were loose, but not to that extent. And yeah, that has yeah, so I'm a convert really.
And now you'll see, you know, when you go around there, we've got the dry cows, the spring the spring calving dry cows. You know, they're on what 5, 6 kilos. The late autumn calvers as well on about 5 or 6 kilos of straw and about 10 kilos of water. So helps it, yeah. And I mean the idea. I mean hay's a perfect dry cow feed, you know, dry suckler cow feed. But again, I mean I don't know where everybody's from, but it's been a challenging old summer this time for forage stock. So even hay is quite short as well. So we've had to rethink, and as you say, it just pads things out. But does the right thing for the cow, you know.
The biggest thing was processing it, getting it into our diets, how we processed it. You know, getting somebody in. We've even run straw through our forager, which worked really well, but it's messy, a pain in the backside. So yeah, that was the biggest challenge.
And stones, yeah.
Well, you've cracked, you know, you've had a new piece of kit list.
So.
Yeah, you'll see what you think when we go around there. Are we keeping that secret then, are we?
It depends how much later you want to talk about. But yeah, so now we actually had a chopper baler this time, and yeah, so far so good. It's clean, it's easy storage of your chopped straw, and with the Vector, it's feeding it brilliantly, which again you'll see at the top. Yep.
Crops and rotational grass, are you trying any new ingredients or anything to go into the diet, or are they crops for selling, or is it just for rotation capacity?
Our cropping side of things, do you mean things like clovers or lucernes or anything like that? We've started to grow more clovers, trying to get more. No, nothing like that at the moment. No, I mean, when we talk about our arable, really our arable is a rotation to get grass back into grass. That's one of our biggest challenges, just dealing with the sward after grass and getting a good establishment. So we would tend to use our arable to get a clean stubble and go back into grass. But yeah, certainly going forward, we will look at different crops. You know, now with the fattening side of things, we haven't been fattening for that long, so finding protein will probably be one of the biggest things at the moment.
Because you mentioned the sort of circular farming concept, so I was wondering how much you were going to be reintegrating going forwards, whether that was something that you were looking at doing.
We are using, we've put some of the arable down to GS4, and I'm actually blown away at how productive the GS4 is. We're into our third grazing.
Yes, it would be.
It certainly doesn't like to be overgrazed, but we are using that, and obviously it's a decent payment with it, which makes it more attractive. But the productivity, we'd probably drop 2 tonnes a hectare off our home farm productivity using the GS4, but with minimum input. So yeah, we would be guilty of overgrazing, I think, historically in the autumn. And we suffer with that a little bit in the spring, but we do seem to probably have addressed that the last 12 months, probably. Yeah. But the GS4 certainly has fitted into what we're doing from a grazing point of view, and that's obviously a multi-species lay. But yeah, we don't use whole crop in the mix. We try. We've even cut our maize a little bit out of the ration to a degree, because we've got a lot of land that will grow good grass but wouldn't be favourable to maize land. It's quite heavy and strong. So we're actually trying to do more with grass than we have done previously. Historically, we would have grown maize and had a 50-50 diet. But with the last 4 or 5 years, we've certainly tailed that off. And I probably think we used to think we knew how to make good silage, but we didn't. Now we probably do know how to make good silage and know. And the difficulty with the beef is it's really difficult to quantify good silage in a monetary term, because it's obviously your daily weight gain is the only thing you've got to benchmark it with. It's not like a dairy cow with milk in the tank. And we would have struggled to see your changes quickly across that. But we've definitely improved that from where we were. I mean, this would be 10, 12 years into our sort of breeding program, really. And whether that's genetics that's improved or just probably our understanding, or a little bit of both. I think we've probably got a bit better at what we're doing, yeah. And, you know, like I said, we've gone from 800 grams as a daily weight gain to, you know, 1.1 in our better heifers and our better breeding stock. So, yeah.
I mean, whether moving forward, we obviously looking for more protein in the diet for the dairy cows. I mean, that may ask questions about perhaps red clover lays or
the clover thing. And
say again, sorry.
What are your thoughts on the whole clover thing from that point of view?
I mean, I think if you know, on a pure cutting situation, I mean, I think there's a massive place for red clover lays in terms of getting that protein content. But albeit, in fairness, you're not struggling for protein in your grass silages as we see at the moment. I mean, typically the last couple of years you've had proteins nudging 17%, you know, which is pretty good and giving us we're not having to buy protein in, you know, that we've managed to satisfy the cows and everything, the animals' diet requirement for the protein on farm, which is
And
good.
I think with that in mind as well, we don't want to overcomplicate what we're doing. We want everything to be as simple as it possibly can with an economic value. And just with the circular side of things, that's more with every business fitting in with the other. Labour sharing throughout with the robotics taking pressure off, allowing us to go out contracting in the spring, but our cattle are still being well looked after. It's that just whole symbiotic relationship. You know, even producing electric on farm that we're then milking cows, scraping the muck out, feeding, and then using the muck to produce electricity.
Can I ask, obviously you've been with Vector now for a while, and I'd like to think it's going well. What's been the learning curve? What's the biggest thing to adjust to Vector? And also, what advice do you have for Mark? Or what does Mark think of it? And yeah, what would you tell him?
Getting used to not seeing a lot of food in front of the cattle would probably be the first thing, because you sort of, I mean, I remember when I first saw the Vector, I said to Richard, we're not having this, it's a waste of time. I said, look how long it takes you to fill the mixer wagon. I could have fed it 3 times by now, but yeah, that would be, your mindset has to change a little bit. But also, we would historically feed in the morning, and if there was 100 kilos of feed left in front of the feed fence, you wouldn't not feed till they've cleaned up. You would add on top of that, and then maybe cut it back the next day, so they had 100 kilos left. But the trouble is, at the end of the week, that added up to a portion of food. You don't get that now, because that you can set those parameters to feed to demand, really, I suppose, would be the word. But yeah, I think that would probably. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of a particular thing that took any adjusting to. It's against the norm. It's different to anything that you were doing before, but everything's a plus, really. It took the burden. The biggest thing you notice is we've got more time to walk through the cattle in the morning. There wasn't the time pressure. That was the job where you had to make time to do, but it's probably one of the most important things to do. Whereas now, because the routine's carrying on without you being involved in it, you are walking through the pens a lot more relaxed, I think. Probably, yeah, for me, that would have been the biggest change.
Things are more consistent as well.
Oh, yeah, 100% more consistent. Yeah,
You would definitely say it was calmer. It's a calmer environment. And I think, like Richard said, is that even now, truthfully, you still struggle to sort of, I haven't got used to them tiddling up and down there feeding the livestock for you. And but before, when we fed before, the mixer wagon would come down, and it was almost a race against time because they were all mobbing the fence. You don't get that now. We don't get them mobbing the fence like they used to. And
so it's good for animals then, isn't it?
Look,
and be great for cows.
Truthfully, we are probably overstocked this year for obvious reasons. And we've probably got more, not loads more, but we've got more animals in pens than we probably would have historically had, and more than we'd possibly like. And I think we're getting away with that because the silage is consistently pushed up to them all the time. And, going forward, it's not how we want to operate because we've got this other project going on. But I think we can only get away with it because we've got something pushing them up all the time. While we're sat here having this conversation, they're out there pushing it up.
And the feeding. In the mornings we would feed, so Pete would start the routines around 6 o'clock, shut the pens back, scrape down, bed down the pens, then everything would be let out and start to feed. We can only feed so many pens in one go, so there were always animals waiting to be fed. And it's the classic, you drive with a feeder wagon, everything's at the fence. And hopefully you'll see that now when the robots are feeding. There is none of that. There's no competition at the feed fence. So the timid cows get an opportunity. The bullying cows have had their fill already, but they're not taking the best food. It's that little and often. And we actually had a meeting with an open day with our nutritionist a week ago with Simon. And it was really interesting, all the things, the feeding little and often, the pushing up all the time, all day long. They're the things you always intend to do, but have never really got time to do. Now it's done for you. That's the biggest thing you notice.
And the other thing, I mean, obviously, other than the thou shall not feed, you can come and do our nutrition as long as I don't feed straw. Then the other one was we don't want too many rations.
Yes.
We're absolutely flat out in the shoulders, like you say. We could keep it to, one ration would do everything if that's brilliant, which of course in reality you were only joking. But I mean, what it now enables us, every pen can have its own ration if needed, and so we're actually targeting the animals with the exact nutritional requirements, and we can manipulate pen by pen. So to the extent last year, obviously you say you keep bulls and everything, they're finished obviously intensively. We actually differentiated between light bulls and heavy bulls, so we could maximise the intake, so we didn't then water the diet down with them eating more than the average. So again, 12 months previous, I mean, that would have never been feasible or possible. And I think, hopefully, we got the rewards, got the feed conversion efficiency that justified that. So.
But also, I think there was a 60p difference in the
Yeah, it was,
ration.
yeah.
It was, so 60 pence difference in feeding costs between the light bulls and the heavy bulls, which obviously the lighter bulls weren't reacting so much to that. So there was a cost there to us. So we saved on that. But also down to the pen sizes, like Simon says, we can feed every pen individually. But for us to put a 150 kilo mix into our tub mix, it was just inconceivable. You wouldn't get a decent mix, and you just wouldn't do it, whereas we can now.
Yeah, as you were drawing the fat stock out of it, obviously the number of cattle was dropping off, and especially towards March time, we would probably be struggling to make a proper mix for the bulls. And I think they're the things and that's what I mean, as in a monetary term, it's really difficult to quantify, because if, like Richard said, we could mix 200 kilos for a bull mix when there's only half a dozen or 15 bulls in a pen left. Well, you wouldn't do that with a mixer wagon, and all those things are very difficult to quantify, to say to you, this is making us this much money, but the benefits are huge.
I'm thinking for you, Mark, because I mean, obviously I don't know your farm at all, but the dairy clients I deal with are different size and shapes, and you always have the tails of calving, and for me, I'm particularly obsessed about dry cows and feeding dry cows. Well, how many farms I deal with where we can't actually do a proper dry cow ration because it's so small, and it's it's not practical, as you say, to put 3 cows worth of a TMR through the mixer wagon. So then we end up compromising. Well, let's do it every other day, which then has another myriad of disasters waiting. Well, now again we can do a dry cow ration. So.
And we all know the theories behind what we want to achieve, but the practicalities have got to come into it. Whereas with the robots, it's practical to feed as many groups as you want to.
I think the dairy guys all you guys here that are dairy would be better at it than what we would, but the Vector's allowed to be as good as the next man, because we have so many demands at our time. You probably know all these things that we're talking about. It's just, and you can probably put them in practice, because some of you will have the scale to do so, but we didn't. And I do remember having the phone call with Simon saying that I want to buy the biggest feeder wagon I possibly can, and I want to feed these cows as quick as I possibly can, because I've got other demands on my time. And it would definitely be the wrong thing to do. I wanted to go from top of the shed to the bottom of the shed with one mix and feed them. But we're not short of horsepower, so truthfully, the bigger the mixer wagon, the better. But how wrong I was, and I can see that now.
I'm just a bit conscious of time. Obviously, I'd like to carry on the discussions after lunch, and lots of Q&As, obviously to Mark and Simon again, and well, to all of us. We are planning on a bit of a farm walk. That's all right. So I'm very conscious that we get that done. And then back here for lunch. We'll have a bit of time over lunch, and then hopefully a lot more questions from you guys as well. And I will explain Vector in a little bit more detail after lunch and what I think the benefits are. And obviously the panel here as well, you can ask them if what I've said is true or not. Hopefully it will be. So I'm just very conscious that we plough on with a farm walk. I mean, ideally, I'd like to split you up into 2 groups, because I'm just very conscious of a big group going round. So I might ask Peter and Rich, could you take a group each?
Well, it's either that or we just mingle in with them. It's fine.
Yeah, well, it's a...
Yeah, well, I don't mind. Yeah, we're quite happy to do it.
And please feel free to ask any questions. They've said, whilst we're up and around the farm, or make a note of it and ask it post. So, yeah, everybody that's done biosecurity, that'd be great. If you haven't, obviously, before we go on farm, I'd be very grateful if we are up together with that. If that's okay?
Toilet-wise, have you mentioned where the toilets are?
Yes, toilets. If you, go out to the yard, turn left, and there's 2 big sheds. You go up between the 2 sheds, and in the top 2 bays, there is there's a very nice flat there, and there are 2 bathrooms in there.
There's a stock trailer parked just outside, so where the stock trailer is, just go in the door there, you'll find the toilets.
Yeah. I think that's it. After lunch, when we do come back, sorry. How many are we? We're best part 40, aren't we? I think 2 groups. I just don't want to, because there's a lot to see, there's a lot to hear from them, and I'm quite keen that we get the most out of Peter Ridge, if that's okay.
Yeah, but 3 tables to left, 3 tables to right.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So we'll just split there then. Is that right?
Good.
Okay.
Right, well, thank you very, very much.
I'll have a tweet.
And we'll go for a wander.
Did you want to?
Obviously, we had a great farm walk. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It really is an incredible place. And there's a lot of work going on. There's a lot of, I think, great excitement going forward. There's a dairy being built and what have you. So that was good. And I hope you've had a nice lunch. And hopefully you'll have picked up on a few things that you want to ask the panel this afternoon. Certainly there is a lot that can be asked. So before we kick off with the panel again this afternoon, I just want to run past a few things from my point of view and what I think a Vector is, Lely, the challenges. By the way, I am a farmer myself, so I do know the challenges of feed and labour, frustration and everything. So I am a dairy farmer and a beef farmer. Right, going forward. Why doesn't this work? There he goes. Just some common details for you. Feed costs make up approximately between 50 and 70% of a farm's day-to-day running cost. A lot of people think, we milk cows twice a day, every day, 3 times a day. Absolutely fine. And we feed cows once a day, sometimes twice a day. Cost is huge, absolutely huge. And a lot of effort goes into producing good quality food. We do soil analysis. We put a lot of effort into fertilizer because we can't waste it. So we map fields, we use slurry properly, we contract it and harvest it well by investing in good contracting. We ensile it as best as we can in a lot of detail, but we feed it quite willy-nilly, not with enough detail, I think. I think going forward, we're under a lot of pressure from rising energy costs and world political issues. A lot of it is out of our control, but it's something we're going to have to live with, I think. And also, again, the effects of extreme weather conditions. We saw weather conditions in the UK this year. The highest I saw was 42 degrees, which is huge. If you think a cow, once she goes over 101 degrees, she tends to stand up till she cools down, because that's how cows do it. And we have to prepare for that. We've got to get everything right. And just by doing little things, it can have a huge effect going forward. And obviously, labour is a huge issue, especially good quality labour we need to depend on. Farming is 7 days a week. Weekends, Christmas days, they're all days that have to be worked. So we put in an obscene amount of effort to doing harvesting and managing farms and worrying about farms. So why waste all this hard work that's been going on? So, not to waste all that work, we want to feed animals regularly and consistent because we don't want waste. It's something we really don't want. And accurate feeding to reduce feed refusals. Feed refusals is the feed that we throw away. Very often we see on farms 3 rations. The first one is what's calculated by, we'll say, Simon Smith, our nutritionist. Then there's another ration that gets put into the feeder wagon by the people. And then there's actually the ration gets eaten by the cows. We want 1 ration, not 3. And we want the allocated rations to the allocated animals. And we saw there today, we can feed loads of different kinds of animals on the farm. Because we asked the Vector to do it, we program the Vector to do it, and it does it until we say not to do it. And that happens 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And it just gives you an obscene amount of data and management. It also gives you maximum flexibility in how you run your daily day. basis, how you manage your farm, how you manage your time, how you can introduce other ingredients very, very quickly. Because byproducts are becoming very, very popular now. But gaining maximum flexibility is important. If you've got other things that is happening on the farm and you need time to manage them, flexibility is a good thing to do. It's always important to present, I think, fresh mixed feed on demand when we want it. And an example there for me is, we've had lunch today, which has been great. I don't want to eat my breakfast, my lunch, maybe afternoon tea and supper in one go. Just don't want to do it. So why do we want a cow to do it? Just doesn't make any sense, whether it's a beef animal or whether it's a dairy animal. Since I joined Lely, I've been absolutely blown away about the amount of data that's behind it, the knowledge behind it, the people that's behind it that we don't get to see. Farmers don't get to see, but trust me, it's there. It really, really is there. And why do we capture data? We want everything to work well for the farm. We want the farm to do as best as possible for the farmers, the animals, and everything. Because there's one thing with Lely, the animals do come first. It's very, very important that we work around our animals. So we do a lot of capturing data. And why do we do that? Because we want everything to work well for you. And this is an example. You don't get to see this. There's no financial reports on this and nothing. This is just a program that looks at how efficient the system is working. And here we can see every time the Vector goes out to the farm, it does 3 jobs. It scans, it feeds, and it pushes up. We know what feed it's mixing, preparing, and where it's going to go next. But on the right there, you can see there, it requested 599 kilos. It loaded 597. We were 98.7% accurate. Because that's what the cow was asked for. And that's what we can deliver. We look at that on a daily basis. Certainly on a weekly basis, it's all fed out to our centre. So if we are seeing farms underperforming, again, not financially, just the Vector system, if it's not performing to where we want it, we can get in touch with the farmer. And a lot of those things you wouldn't see with the human eye. You wouldn't even pick it up. But we monitor that all the time. Every movement the Vector does, we will know about it. And that's what we want to do. And I'll give you a quick example here about feeding to demand and being accurate. That's 120 cows there, 2 robots, fed on a Vector system. Obviously, that's a wheelbarrow, and yes, it's waste food. So let's go back to your farms on a daily basis. Do you feed your cows once a day, twice a day? You're the ones that knows what's in front of the cows. I don't. But that is feed waste, obviously. So somebody will tell me, surely, how long did it take me to get there? I got it wrong, so don't be worried what you say, but somebody got an idea. How long did it take me to get to that? And we feed cows, many times a day. Surely somebody, Addy, be quiet. Surely somebody here can give me a figure on that. A week. Bang on. That's not bad. If you look at your farms on a daily basis, I wonder how much is left. We're seeing between 5 and 8%, quite commonly. 10% is another figure we're seeing. And yes, you can turn around and say, do you know what? It's not waste, we put it in the heifers. Actually, it's not the right ration to put in the heifers. And we can turn that on its head. So if the cows are out of food and the heifers are tons left, would I feed that to the dairy cow? No. So why reverse it? There's just no point. When we introduce Vector and regular feeding, we want to see what it does achieve, what it does to the cow. And what we want to do is we want to look how efficient we can make the cows work. So the amount of concentrate we feed a cow, and then how we can get that cow to turn the forage and concentrate into milk. Because at the end of the day, that's money in the bank. And we want to be efficient at what we do. The cow is in the center of what Lely do, and we work around the cow, always. If we have happy, good, productive cows, they will deliver. There's no point putting a cherry on a cake if you haven't baked the cake. It'll just sink through and you won't see the benefits of it. So we have to get so many little things right and understand what the cow needs. She needs regular food, she needs the right temperature, she needs the right space, she needs to feel happy. You've got to remember the cows don't have very good sight. They have great hearing and great sense of smell. But we need to understand all of these things, how a cow works. And that's what will bring us a return on our investment. And when we get happy cows working well, there's usually an enjoyable job to be had, and the farmer's happy. A farm has to be enjoyable, it has to be profitable, it has to be consistent. Cows love consistency. They just want a boring life. And that's great. They're extremely hard-working animals. So consistency is so important. But it's also important how we handle our animals and deal with them. If we're happy, the business is happy, good working people, you're happy in yourself, and you treat animals better, just the way you are with them. Animals want to trust you, and they will trust you, but you've got to show them trust. And if we can put all these things together right, and the vector system, and regular feeding, and understanding, and doing everything to it demands, whether it's milking through a robot or feeding through vector, that's when it all comes together. The vector system is quite an easy system when you look at it. It's quite complex to put in, i.e. there's a fair bit of work that goes into it to get it right. I'm not keen on putting a vector system in and then having to come back in a few weeks and this is not right, this is not right. I have a theory, I measure twice, I cut once, because I prefer it to be like that. So for every customer interested in the Lely Vector system, what we do is we calculate the capacity on the farm's requirements and the demands, i.e. roots, ration, cows, everything like that, so we can deliver to you a package. But it's also important that we listen to the wishes of our farmers and what the farm wants to achieve going forward. What is their plan for the business? Agriculture is a business. And also, why would the Lely Vector system work for you? And based on all the information we can gather, we calculate what will work for you. Whether it's one kitchen, two kitchens, one MFR, two MFRs, and how the whole system works. It's very, very important, certainly from me being a farmer as well. Yes, there are financial gains in farming. And it's so, so important to have financial gains. I can't put a price on the other things that I've experienced through farming by having healthier animals, happier the members of staff, knowing the farm is doing well, knowing you've got time to look at other things that you can be doing on the farm. This is just a basic quick system overview I'll give you. We root farms out. We've got a kitchen in the middle there, so we can see we've got dry cows, milking cows, and this is all part of how we can get the vector system to work for your farm. So there's a fair bit of work, homework to be done first, but it's all about making the farmer and the cow happy. And to me, there are so many benefits of a vector system that we don't actually see. I'm going to finish now because you've heard enough from me. This panel behind me, they're all experienced in it. Please ask them as many questions as you want. Vector is quite a newish thing. Well, it's been around 11 years. But please use the panel, because that's what they're here for. In any case, that's enough from me. Simon, Mark, we've got Peter and Rich here. Please use them, because they will be able to give you some great, great answers, no doubt. And we've got Mark here, all the way from South Wales, having made the decision to go vector. Good question, why? What made you go vector? So the floor is open to you guys. And yeah, fire away at them. Okay, here we go. Simon, if you do need that, you've got that.
Can I ask a question?
You can ask whatever you want, Simon.
So I was going to ask you, Mark, about your farm and your dairy farm and what the journey you've been on again. If you've been robotically milking for 4 years, so
No problem. Yeah, me and Caroline, farming in Pembrokeshire. We put a new unit up 4.5 years ago. We've been currently milking with four robots now for 4.5 years. Completely successful. We took a dive. We needed a new setup, slurry pit, parlour, cubicles, everything. So we either dived in and go for it or not. So we spoke to Lely, and in all fairness, we had all support from them, and cubicle design, layout, and which way the robots would work. And we followed their advice, and obviously their advice has been very successful, very useful, and we've made a success of it. It made me laugh earlier this morning when one of these boys said that when they put the Vector in, they all of a sudden noticed that there was hardly any food in front of the animals. Well, it was the same when me and Caroline started with the cows. We had all the cows in the shed, and there was milk pouring everywhere, and the first thing we said is, these robots are not going to milk all these cows. No way, it's not going to be done. But within a week or two, it was all done. We never lost a cow. We never had to get rid of a cow, and that was 252 cows started. So there was a multiple of heifers, old cows in there, and we never failed with one. So that is saying something about the Lely equipment that we installed, really. But moving on, we started with 9,000 litre cows when we moved in, milking twice a day. We got pedigree Holsteins. And within a year, we'd moved up 1,000 litres. Within 2 years, we moved up another 1,000 litres, and now we're currently just doing over 12,000 litres per cow. We were a little bit concerned at the time that we'd lose milk quality. Our milk quality at the time was just over about 4.1, 4.2% fat. We've done more than maintained it. We're currently running at about 4.5% fat at the moment. So the quality of our milk has obviously gone up. We've seen better health from the cows. The cows are not so stressed. Again, as we said about feeding with the Vector, when you feed up with the Vector, although there may not seem to be so much food in front of them, the cows are not stressed when they come to feed. So that's another thing that puts our confidence in what we can see that we can achieve with the Vector. We feed up twice a day now, and obviously we do have a little bit of bullion when we come to the feed fence. Obviously they haven't seen the feeder for 12 hours. Although there may be a little bit of feed left, they know there's something fresh coming in front of them, so they all rush up. So I think that's another thing that we've seen, an advantage of using the Vector, is that there'll always be fresh food in front of them, so then we see a little bit less bullion coming onto the feed fence. We can see potential in the cows to push a little bit further, and we're pretty positive that the Vector system can help us achieve this. We tend to grow 5 cuts of silage every year, the first cut coming off mid to 20th of May. Last year we did manage 6 cuts, but we were back to 5 cuts this year due to the weather and the growth. All our silages range from sort of 11.5 to 12 ME, proteins around 16 to 17, so we've got the feed value. Now we just need to put 2 and 2 together to hopefully get 5. So that's basically why we've decided to go for the Lely Vector. We have got confidence, 100% confidence in the Lely equipment and the support. We've had excellent support from the 2 mechanics that have supported us over the 2 years. We know the availability is there and support, so we built the system on the fact that one day we could put the Vector in, so we haven't got any problems or issues there. So hence the reason why we took our hat off and said, let's go for it.
And what labour do you currently have then, or did you have and currently have and will have then?
We've got 240 cows there. We've got about 200 young stock as well, of which on weekends myself and Caroline manage everything. We've got 2 part-timers that are there now. They're pretty good, but as we all know, staff can have their days. Those days come around pretty often. And I know the young man that we got feeding there for me this morning and tonight now. I know tomorrow morning that there'll be excess feed in the fence, because he just doesn't want the cows to run out, so he'll put an extra grab full of silage in, and tomorrow night I'll be cleaning up. That'll be the first job. So, you know, no disrespect to them, they do their job, but it's not done to the precise precision that you want. And we all know the cost of fertilizer, seeds, and whatever's going on in agriculture these days. You want to look after the pennies, because if you look after the pennies, the pounds look after themselves. And that's generally why we want to economise. We've seen the benefits that you can gain from the Lely equipment, so we've got full confidence in going forward in installing the Vector to help us achieve better goals, really.
And the reason you feed twice a day at the moment, or have done?
Yeah, the reason why we feed twice a day now, because basically we haven't got time to feed any more times a day.
As opposed to once then?
Yes, basically, yeah. Well, we were feeding once a day, but yeah, that was, as you said, the feed was getting stale. And especially if we've got dryish silage, perhaps it was maybe going off, especially in the summer anyway. So basically then we fell back to twice a day, and we had the robots milking. It gives us the opportunity then a bit more time to feed twice a day, but I can generally see the benefits of feeding, you know, more times than that to keep the food fresh for the cows. Because we've got the Juno feeding, pushing up the silage, which goes every hour, and every time the Juno goes round, you see cows coming forward as the feed is pushed up. So we see benefits of that as well.
And are yours in 12 months of the year, are they?
Ours are in 12 months of the year, yes. Yes.
Have you seen any others longevity in the cows? Have you seen the lactation?
Oh, definitely. And, you know, heifers benefit massively. You know, as I said before, we had a current average yield of 9,000. If you had a heifer doing 7,000 litres before, we were more than happy. But now it's nothing to see a heifer do 10,000 litres. We started a little project of our own there 2 years ago by bringing, generally when we started, we were carving heifers down, bring them into the shed, then starting to train them in the robot. But now we've changed our policy. We bring them into the shed 3 weeks before calving, not too soon to disturb them. Three weeks before calving, just leave them in with the cows to mingle, to see what the cows do with the robots. We put a collar on them after 10 days, then put them into the robot to have a bit of feed. I try to do that once a day for a while, and then generally I just check the computer and they're going in themselves for a little bit of feed, and they're nosing all the time. So when you have them out to calve down, when you put them into the first time to milk, they know what's going on. There might be a little bit of kicking the first once or twice, but then they know what's going on. They go into the robot and you forget about them. And it's like a little bit of homework that needs to be done. And if you forget to do your homework, oh boy, you do know about it.
Thank you.
Simon, I'm going to ask a question. Feeding cows regular and often, and also, I mean, both farmers here very, very heavily foraged base, but top good quality forage, yeah? Okay, so we've started off with good quality forage, and we're going to feed them as often as we can, especially with the Lely Vector system, yeah? So we're going to make the cow more efficient, hopefully, yeah?
Yeah.
So if we do that, can we get, like, can we monitor how efficient a cow is? Is there a guide that tells you how efficient cows are and how they turn it into money? Feed efficiency number.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I think traditionally we've always used like dairy costings, for example. So we're focusing largely then on purchased foods, whether that's purchased food per litre, feed rates, or indeed margin over purchased feeds, which is fine and have stood the test of time and is something that even I still get excited about doing on a monthly basis now, because it gives you something to benchmark against yourself and take the business forward. But I think the next level on from that, and having many conversation with Pete and Rich over the last few months, is the cost of making this forage is just getting more and more expensive. So where perhaps in the past we've looked at forage as being a free or cheap raw material, although very vitally important, we've got to treat that with more respect, I think, these days. So the next level on really from the dairy costings is what we call feed efficiency. So where we can look at the total amount of kilos of dry matter fed to an animal in a day, and fed, or should I say consumed, so i.e. what the amount of kilos of dry matter she consumes, which is what she's fed minus what we scraped away, which in the example you gave earlier is not a lot, but in some cases it can be, 10% or 5%. Therefore, once you've know the amount of kilos of dry matter of total diet that animal is consuming, we then just simply divide that by the amount of kilos of milk that cow is producing in a day. And one divided by the other gives us a typical feed efficiency, which, yes, you can use, crucially, you can benchmark against industry levels. You can clearly benchmark against where you have been. But for me, the big telling factor is whenever we implement changes and modifications and tweaks, which sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, we've actually got something that is tangible to measure to see whether it has or hasn't worked. I.e., if we can get more kilos of milk from less kilos of feed consumed, then we're obviously becoming more efficient, which is obviously great news for the client.
So feed efficiency number to you is crucial.
Very key. Yeah, absolutely.
From a nutritionist.
Yep, absolutely. And probably more, so you might think, well, I know there'll be people in the audience say, well, this is old as hat. It's been talked about feed efficiency for years and years and years. And I mean, that would be true. It's not something that I've dreamt up as a brand new figure. But I think in this changing times of red diesel at £1 a litre and the cost of silage, fertiliser, etc., making the cost of grass silage, I wouldn't say doubling, but significantly increasing, we need to look at that whole picture and have a better lens of the whole cost of that total diet.
Would you have that figure at the moment, Mark, feed efficiency?
Not really. No, you just try to do the best you can with the forage that you got. We, as I say, we do 5 cuts of silage every year. We generally do 150 to 170 acres of silage at one go. We reseeding policy, every field has got to be reseeded every 4 to 5 years. We generally do the last cut as round bales. I generally can then see which fields need reseeding. You have bales per acre, and it's a pretty simple, because when boys on silage there, it all comes in within hours, and you don't really know if one field has been a bit more efficient than others. And I can generate, if there's a field that's been 4th or 5th year, there's less bales on the last cut, those fields get reseeded. So you start off with the basics, basically, by looking after the land, getting as much grass as you can from fresh seeds, and that's where we basically started, really. And you try to get as much in as you can by being efficient there. And I think there was a question earlier about clover. We generally don't grow any clover, basically for the reason why we do 5 cuts of silage. And when you do 5 cuts of silage, it can be very difficult to find a window in the summer to grab it in. And what we find, we grow ryegrasses, and some cuts you're there mowing in the afternoon and having it in the next morning. And we find ryegrasses dry out quicker, and you can have it in, and we're still achieving proteins of 16-17%. Whereas I find if there's a lot of clovers in some lays, it can take a lot of drying out, especially if the weather's been a little bit heavy, a little bit damp, and sometimes you don't have those drying days, and the silage comes in and it can be a little bit sloppy. So generally that's why we sort of stuck with the lays that we have to keep it simple and keep it easy for the contractor. We can just mow it down, ted it out, and have it in within 12 to 24 hours as quick as we can, because we've got to plan for the next cut before that one is being finished having in, really. So yeah, efficiency starts there. And by putting a number to this at the minute, I can't really give you anything positive, but I do my little bit to what I can. And then when you've got the base of good forage in the clamp, then it's a good base to work on.
Well, yeah, I mean, exactly. It's getting the fundamentals, and given the yield that you're achieving and with quality forage, I mean, it's a fairly straightforward calculation to work out, but you'd be pretty efficient to get those numbers. I guess it's then understanding what modifications or tweaks the vector, for example, you can then see, well, am I getting the same yield, but am I getting it from less concentrate or less total diet, or am I getting more milk from more feed, but it's still better in your benefit, more in your benefit?
That's right, because we always use the card, tap the calculator, and every day to see where we're at, and we always try to keep at a feed rate of about 0.35 to 0.38 kilos of concentrates per litre. So I think that's a reasonable figure to look at 12,000 litre cow. I don't know what you think of that, Simon. Is that should I be pulling it back a little bit? Maybe there's room for.
I mean, we could do a quick feed efficiency, but I mean, I always think that you want, my aim all the while is to try and get around that 0.32. But I mean, there's different circumstances, but that's the kind of, if we're back to old money of kilos per litre of total concentrate, is about the 0.32. So when again, if we're looking to drive those, those litres from forage as well, because an element, once you get towards that 0.4, you're in danger of substituting quality farm. Now, this time last year, where certainly in this part of the world that we were dealing with some reasonable abject forage due to the late harvest, we were having to substitute forage with concentrate. It was a deliberate strategy to try and drive milk. Otherwise, we're never going to get the milk.
No.
But given the quality of the silage, but it's very difficult to pass judgment on it. Yes. But yeah.
It's interesting though, talking about the feed efficiency numbers, and it's something that I wouldn't be able to give you a figure of what our forage is. We know what it is, we know how to work it out, but it's not something we do. But going back to the very basics again, we all know that pushing your silage up more often, feeding less more often is a far better thing to do and give you gains, but not many people would be doing that. Not many people would be feeding. Or as you say, time factor involved in all of it, where the Vector comes into it, you can feed 12 times a day, you can push up your forage 24 times a day. So rather than, worrying about overcomplicating something, understanding a sum to work out your feed efficiencies, you can do the really basic things really well and still give yourself those marginal gains.
Simon, what are the basic things that you can do really well? Because we've talked a lot about fantastic feed or fantastic forages. You just mentioned pushing it in regularly. But what are the key things that you see on farms around the country that there could be improved, given you the gains that you want or are aiming for?
Yeah, I mean, so I think let's put some numbers on what we're doing. So what would we decree as being a good feed efficiency figure? So if you look at probably good, upper quartile, you're looking at about 1.6 kilos of energy-corrected milk for every kilo of dry matter consumed. So I haven't got a calculator, my mental arithmetic is abysmal, so hopefully somebody will help me out. But if you think typically 25 kilos of dry matter would be what we'd expect the average for a high-yielding Holstein to consume. I mean, people say, oh, well, we've got going to eating 32. Oh, that's fine, but let's just use easy maths of 25. Multiply that by 1.6, should give you a bit of, which I don't know what that adds up to, but it should give you what you should be expecting. About 40, is it 39 or something? Yeah. About 39 litres for average for a cow consuming 25 kilos of food. So that just gives you what 1.6 looks like. Now, I do this with my clients. I've got some clients, despite my presence on their farm, that might be just squeaking 1 for 1. Clearly, we've got a lot of work to do there. And I've got the odd farm that gets to 1.8. So, you've got the fair range. So what are they doing? It is, I think, 3 words, really, and it covers everything. It's attention to detail. And that is the difference between somebody with a good feed efficiency, and you might think that's a very blue, but it's, age at first calving. It's all the things we've talked about, quality of forage. It's about pushing the feed up. But it could be frequency of milking. It could be, are we having transition issues? Are they having milk fevers? Are we having retained cleansings? Are we having LDAs? Have we got mastitis problem? We've got cell count issues. All these things will detract energy from that cow's ration that they're deriving every day. And therefore, if that's robbing the energy from them, they're not going to be producing it in milk. I mean, my favourite statistic, which I bore my clients with on every day, is that it takes about 3 kilos of glucose to produce 42 litres of milk a day. 12 hours of inflammation for a cow will starve that cow, will take 1 kilo of glucose away from that cow. So if you think she's inflamed for 24 hours, that's 2 kilos of glucose, and actually she needs 3 kilos to produce 42 litres of milk. Now, what happens, we all know, there's lots of dairy people in the audience, that cow won't go from 42 litres to 0. She'll probably go from 42 litres to 35 or 32, as well as fighting the inflammation. And then what happens? She doesn't get in calf. She's lame. There's all extended calf. So these are all these things. But yet she's still consuming, unless she's really sick, the same amount of kilos of dry matter of diet every day, yet she's not giving the milk. So therefore, the feed efficiency goes down. So it's all about that whole... So, I mean, I could talk, lighting, water trough access, feed access, lying times. You know, people with milking parlours, you know, bless one of my customers, he was designing a new milking parlour and set up, and he said, look at the size of this collecting yard, isn't it fantastic? Why is it fantastic? Well, I get all the cows in here. Well, that's a disaster. You know, it's a disaster. I want those cows, I don't want them cows to be away from food and water for greater than 45 minutes, not 4.5 hours in your new collecting yard. I'm exaggerating, but, you know, and he said, oh, gosh, oh, right, okay, well, we need to rethink this then. So there's just, so, you know, are they grazing? I mean, the grazing is absolutely fantastic, but is the grazing adding value, or is it actually taking energy and detracting from, are we starving them because they're away from their diet? You know, me and the Burbage boys went on a road trip a couple of years ago, and we went to this robotic grazing unit. They came out of the grazeway gate, and it was like walking up the north face of the Eiger to get to the grazing. You know, it was just miles. And you think, I can't see how this is adding value, because they were literally had like a 15, 20-minute walk to the grazing, and then obviously the same when they turn around and come. So there's lots of, I mean, I'm not cutting it short because I don't know, but I don't want to bore you with it. But there's just so many different things that have impact on.
But I'm right in thinking on that analogy you gave in 25 kilos and then the 1-to-1 ratio being 25 and then 39. Is that 14 kilos of milk difference?
Correct, yes.
To the same input cost?
Correct.
Wow.
That's energy corrected milk, is it?
That's energy corrected milk, yes. Yeah, energy corrected milk. Which again, for those, I mean, we have, the UK have one which is 4 and 3.3. The US have a different version of 3.6, 5 and 3.2. But for all my calculations, clearly operating here in the UK, we did on the UK energy corrected milk, yeah. So, which is great, because I mean, I've got spring grazers, you know, and it puts them on a footing with high yielding Jerseys and high yielding Holsteins on on the feed efficiency. So it's a very good fair system that compares, you know, like for like lots of different systems. But it's that ability to be able to measure the changes we've made, have they worked or haven't they worked, that I like. Where costings only tell you half the story.
How often would you like to see an energy efficiency number shown to you?
When I do, I mean, that's like a sales pitch for me, but when I go to my clients, we do it every month. So we do dairy costings.
Is it a big job?
No. If you do dairy costings, it's 2 minutes of a job.
Imagine if we did it every day for you.
Well, all my clients should do it for me. That's good of you.
The Vector will do it for you.
Right.
It'll give you a feed efficiency number every day. So, dry matter consumed, milk, because it'll speak to the robot. We know what's going through the robot.
Milking, only if you're milking, right?
Yeah, if you're milking through it as well. So, that surely has a bit of an advantage. I see there's a gentleman just walked in the back there, was my colleague Mike Steele, who is FMS lead at Lely. We forgive you for being late.
No, we
and Mike heads up farm management support for Lely. He's a vet as well. And obviously heavily involved with Horizon, which is a program that helps farmers and everybody really to manage their farms. So, Mike, we can get feed efficiency numbers.
We can. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So on the Lely system, when we get behind a screen, then once you've got the vector, then and you've put in all of your feed inputs, as long as you know what the dry matter intake is and the energy density of that dry matter, then we can just pull up the feed efficiency. It's one of the features on the dashboard that you can see. So yeah, just so that I introduce myself to you, so I'm not a random guy that's just turned up, is I'm Mike Steele, and I'm the farm management support lead for Lely Atlantic. So farm management support, you've just heard about the product, you've heard about what it does and the routings and everything. And we have teams in each centre, wherever you are in the country, that will take your hand through the installation process. But these aren't people that are focused on the engineering side, they're focused on the cow side. So my background is I'm a vet. I graduated 23 years ago, I think now, and I've been lucky enough to, in previous roles, go around the world looking at lots of dairies, from Canada to Africa to Pakistan, so all over the place. But one of the things that I'm always seeing, and it was music to my ears to meet Simon again and to hear what he was saying there about the demands of energy that health or lack of health makes. And to be able to ensure that those cows have that fresh feed in front of them all of the time just is that extra impetus to get that energy in. Simon mentioned about the 3 kilos of glucose. That's a figure that I use a lot when I try and explain to people the importance of energy intakes and rations. But yeah, the crucial thing there is that if there is an inflammation process going on, if there's a disease somewhere around and the cow goes downhill, you've got to consider that 3 kilos of glucose is like the equivalent of, I'm a cycling fan myself, of riding a Tour de France stage every day. And you can imagine that if those riders catch a slight cold or they're just off colour just for that day, they're not going to get anywhere close to the performance that they were. These guys are at the top of their game. And a top producing dairy cow is one of those kind of Formula One animals. They need that energy input. So the impact of those things is quite incredible. So, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's really important. That's a good question. Yeah, so rumen stability. If there's, I always used to say there's 3, you can manage cows with 3 words. And it's limit system variability. They like everything consistent. Keep everything consistent and they'll look after you 100%. And rumen stability, so anything that's consistent is good. So anything that changes consistency is stressful on the system. And like you all know, you don't feed cows. You feed a bunch of bugs in a rumen. So you have to keep that environment really stable. So things like, no-brainer things like using a live yeast. Yeah, that's going to stabilize pH, so that's going to be great. But anything like that, anything that changes those fluctuations in pH, and one of those things is feed frequency. And so having small amounts more often is a much more consistent way of dealing with rumen stability than these big gluts of feed intakes. It's really interesting looking at the data behind that, but yeah, that's a good question. So, actually, it's nice to see you again, Simon, and it's nice to meet you guys as well, because I've heard about you in the background. I've not actually met you, and I saw you on the webinar that we gave earlier on in the year, in fact, and the video that you did. It's a fascinating place you've got here, and I think the setup is fantastic from what I've seen. And I wish you all the best of luck, Mark, actually, with it, with your project. I really do. I think you're well set up to succeed, just with the mindset that I've heard just being here in the last few minutes or so. Yeah. So, yeah, my question to you really is, out of all of the things that the Vector can offer, what's the most attractive thing to you?
I think is probably looking at the efficiency that it can give us really by achieving more from the cows, because I think we've probably gone through a stage over the last 10 years where there's a lot of farms, numbers game all the time. People keep more cows, and they think if they keep more cows, you become more efficient, or just because the milkshake gets bigger, you become more efficient and more profitable. But I don't think that's the case. I think everybody has sort of come down to earth this last few years and decided, well, hang on, small herds can be profitable as well. And it's looking at the, as Simon said, attention to detail. looking after the stock that you've got rather than running around chasing your tail all the time, trying to do too many things. And I think, as I said before, as we've been milking with the robots for 4 years and we've seen what we can achieve from the efficiency and not only that, but the health of the stock as well. We've seen fertility improvements, which we never thought we'd really... It was pretty good with us before, but we did think as we've gone up into the volume of milk that we have, we've gone up by 25%. And, you know, we thought that something else would suffer, whether it be the fertility or feet or whatever, but I think that the feet have definitely gone better. And that's probably due to not standing around. As you said, I'm not in the collecting yards, not having to wait all the time. We've seen, I think one little bit of advice I'd give for anybody if they're using robots in the minute is to be careful with the free time. We've seen a massive benefit by staying in the window that Lely sort of provide for you and what free time you should be, making sure that the cows have got adequate time to go in and not queuing up. That's an essential part of using the Lely equipment. And again, using the Vector would help us step forward and be more efficient, use our feed, because I think we're pretty on the button with the feed quality that we can do. So we need to benefit a little bit more from it, really. And we've seen that the job that these two good gentlemen here have been doing here, and the quality of the stock that we've seen today, and the efficiency that they were providing to them, you know, we can push forward. And yeah, I've no doubt that we'll see a couple of litres of cow again, and it'll pay for itself hands down. So that's basically why we're moving forward into going to this new project.
Lovely, yeah. Well, I know Derrick and I... Oh, sorry, yes, carry on. Yeah.
Just a quick question for Simon, Richard and Peter. Obviously, Simon, you've been involved in Burbage's business for a significant time before Vector. How has the data that comes from Vector and things that have changed over the last 12 months, how has that helped or changed the dynamic of your relationship? And what do you look at now that you maybe didn't look at in the past because the information wasn't available to you?
Probably that intake earlier was probably one of the
I think,
things.
I mean,
we wouldn't have picked up, would we?
you get on top of things sooner, quicker. So we gave the example earlier this morning about last year where we knew very quickly that they were eating us out of house and home, a particular group, and then backed up by the way in, we knew they weren't performing, so we could make a tweak there. Just this morning, because it's the first time we've caught up since everything's been housed and everything's fully being fed, that in particular the in-calf dairy heifers, I felt they'd not grown in the month since I last saw them, or 6 weeks since I last saw them. And then when we looked, the intakes are very average between those and the other growers, the beef growers. So again, very quickly, hopefully we've not lost too much time, we can then bring those into their own group, if you like, their own special diet, and therefore target their needs exactly. And probably, I'm not saying, because these guys have got great attention to detail and know their stock, but that backed up with the real information of what they're consuming. I think the one question I ask for my clients and their staff more than anything when I'm on farm is, what is that group consuming? Are they eating one ration for one cow from the ration I designed, or are they eating more or less? And usually when I get the WhatsApp message at 4:30 in the morning to say, we've just had a retained cleansing or milk fever, or these cows aren't milking, or whatever, first question is, what are they eating? Are they eating one ration for... Oh, no, they're not quite clear. They haven't been clearing up for the last 2 weeks. Right, well, let's get them eating one for one. Let's get them consuming 100% of their allocated concentrates, 100% of their allocated minerals and vitamins, and then let's judge whether we have got a problem or where we haven't. And I think that's that question I must be like a broken record asking. So Vector then pretty much gives us that information, gives me that information, or can provide that information to the farmer to give to me very quickly.
But I think that everybody strives to be as good as they possibly can be, however you're feeding. Nobody. You set your stall out to feed 100%. You very, very rarely achieve that, and I think that is a frustration from certainly from our point of view, you strive to be as good as you can be. And then with so many varying factors, whether it's time or other pulls on your business or whatever it might be, you very rarely achieve it. And that's probably the bit that, I mean, Rich has probably got a different view of what I think makes the Vector stand out. But I think for me, it allows us to feed 100% of the time, all of the time, rather than 75% one day, 80% the next day, 90%, and on the odd day, 100%.
And the best people, and other than obviously automated feeding system, the best people feeding the cows is generally when it's the primary farmer himself doing the feeding. And and the clients are they're the best because they're cow focused, they're cow centric, and they're feeding like they want. But it's when they have a day off, or their herdsman, or the herdsman's off, and then the tractor drivers, or the tractor driver talks to the deputy tractor driver, and then we end up in chaos raining.
That's not because they don't want to do the job well.
No, it's communication.
And partly because
Can I
they
interrupt
possibly
you for
don't
1 minute? I've got a question over there. Sorry, I don't want to miss out on a question. I do apologise.
Yeah, just a quick question. Like with grazing systems, like your system now, have you looked at the costings of keeping all the animals in 12 months of the year, bringing their silage in, forages in, and doing that sort of system compared to what? For everything?
No, is the honest answer to that, because we'll be focused on grazing, and I can't help but thinking there's nothing cheaper than a cow grazing grass and harvesting it. And yeah, I think probably the feed conversion on the beef would probably be an interesting one to do from retaining them in, but certainly from the cow point of view, no, that wouldn't even have been something that's...
No, and it's probably something we should look at. It would be interesting to see the difference, but in truth, from everything else, the reason the sucklers fit so well within our business is because of the simplicity, and there isn't anything more simple than a cow grazing outside, moving fences for an hour in the morning, and then we can go off and do our full-time job, because it costs us without sort of readjusting on the energy costs. It costs us about 600 quid a year to keep a cow. Well, for a fact that's going to increase, especially when you talk to spring calving suckler guys that will treat their cows a lot leaner than we would. I just don't think it would work on the sucklers. Certainly on the dairy, look, you never say never. We want to graze, we are graziers, but on the same token, we're also driven by profit. So
I think it'd be a good exercise to retain the beefing, because what we do at the moment is if they haven't got to a target weight by the spring, we feel that the grazed grass is going to perform that better for us, and then we'll bring them in partway through the summer, although we left it a lot later this time because we're so short of forage. But yeah, it's something we could probably quantify and put figures on to equate to that. But it's growing cattle to get the frame. It's easier to finish. It's growing cattle to get the frame, and going out to grass is the best way of growing frame and the cheapest way of growing frame, I think. I would.
What's the plan if you've been short with forage this year? Mm-hmm. What's the plan with next year having 120 milking cows on top of that?
500 acres of first cut.
yeah, we've got
Plenty of grass.
we've got more grass in the ground.
Right.
So more
Can you go into yours over another farmer first?
forage, absolutely not. No, we would always try and make sure, because the contracting is really the bread and butter of our business. But then saying that, with the capacity we've got on the chopping and the way we grow our grass, in truth, you can do it all. You can, we've actually got a couple of customers in the audits, and I'd hope that they would agree with that, the way we treat their farm. But there is quite a broad spectrum on the window, from that first opportunity to go. We always try and cut early. If we could go in April, we'll go in April, depending on the weather.
We would probably sacrifice quite a lot of yield at home to go, because I kind of feel it's a bit unprofessional if we're doing our silage when we should be doing somebody else's, and I never want to have that conflict, really.
But I don't think it's ever caused us a true problem with our forage quality. Smithy, would you agree with that?
No.
Well, probably only in the lack of fibre.
But we could. I'm not. Yeah. No. I'm not worried. No.
Straw.
It was always straw in the Peter.
Obsessed.
Yeah.
Yeah, we, to be fair, we don't tend to feed anything like that. But for the sucklers, I mean, look, the dairy will be a completely different kettle of fish. But for the sucklers, it really is as minimal as we can keep it, as much from forage.
And it sounds a contradiction in terms, and in fact, we're saying minimalistic, and yet we've got a bloody robot that feeds them, which is counterproductive. But again, the simplicity is grazed grass and forage, and to maximise the use of both is okay. The robots don't influence the grazing, but they certainly do the feeding. And we have feed efficiency for the forage that we are feeding, and every kilo counts.
The interesting thing is as well, is everyone will turn around and say that you're better at feeding your own cows than anyone else would be. But actually, the Vector is better at feeding our cows than certainly I am. It's so much more accurate, you know, and from the whole process, it's given us the potential to be far better at our clamp management because of the way we can do it, cutting the blocks out, storing them in the feed kitchen where they're undercover, which for a contractor, an undercover silage clamp is the worst thing in the world. You know, for capacity when people are telling you what they want to fit in there, but then the physics of where the roof is, plus get rolling on the edges when you've got a cab to worry about. So having our clamp, it's always undercover. You know, as soon as it's cut from under the sheets, it can go in the shed. It's cut out well, it's clean, there's no oxygen getting inside it because of the way it's cut. Then we've got no ingress of oxygen going into the clamp because we haven't got the water running in there if you decided to cut the sheets back too far. So there's a lot, the Vector is better at what we do than we were. Sorry, 2 seconds. One of the other things for your question, Andy, in like the figures coming